Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, we were scheduled to have a Board of Commissioner meeting here at the Justice Center. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. Likewise, this might have been the smallest crowd that we've had since I can recall my tenure on the board, but it's good to have you with us today. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going over one item tonight. That's item for discussion here, the finalizing of the tax resolution. So, yes, sir.
Might I make an amendment to this agenda that we have at least a short discussion about the CARES Act? Is it appropriate for me to make that a request?
We can do that.
Okay. I don't know when
I
need to ask.
just said something about this might be the shortest meeting, but yes, sir. You'll make a motion. We'll amend the agenda to talk about the CARES Act.
Yes, sir.
So I have a motion,
I second the motion.
and we got a second to talk about the CARES Act. And that'd be good for us to go over the CARES Act. So we'll list that as B, the CARES Act. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor of adjusting the agenda? We got a 5-0 vote. Adjust the agenda to talk about the CARES Act. So we can, that's something we're dealing with and looking at very closely. And we appreciate that CARES Act. It's going to help the county. Finalizing the tax resolution, Ms. Thomas, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit before we take action.
Yes, sir. So yesterday, or last evening, you guys voted to approve the incorporated and unincorporated rates as well as the IBA. This evening, after meeting all of their requirements, the Board of Education voted on their tax levy for 2020 at a tax of 17 mills. To be completely in order, the Board of Commissioners needs to approve the tax resolution document where it states each one of the components of the millage rate on the bills. I'm going to repeat those to you guys, even though we just had a meeting yesterday
Yes.
evening. You guys voted a tax of 10.553 mills on the dollar for the unincorporated Franklin County, a tax of 11.7 mills on the incorporated Franklin County, a tax of 0.25 mills on the dollar for the IBA, and this evening you will need to formalize the tax levy for the Board of Education at a tax rate of 17 mills on the dollar. The format for the tax resolution is the same as prior years. It does disclose the insurance premium proceeds that we utilize to roll back the millage rate. We rolled back of the $1,084,451 that we received in insurance premiums. We used $631,404 to roll back the taxes, and then we used the remainder of that money to fund fire services in the unincorporated area and other essential services for the inhabitants of the unincorporated area.
So the millage rate that you read out for the county commissioners then was a 0.25 reduction in millage, right?
That represents the 0.25 from the rollback rate.
From the rollback rate that we voted on last night. Okay. So do I have a resolution? Do I have a motion to adopt these rates?
I move that we approve the resolution adopting the millage rate tax levies for the county, for the BOE and the IBA.
Thank you. Dr. Max makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have a second by Commissioner Wester. Any discussion, gentlemen?
I just want to clarify, us passing this with the school board millage is something that we are required to do by law. This is not something that we can turn down. So this is something that's just a formality that we're required to do.
That's correct. It's required that we put our stamp on it, but not necessarily our approval on it, just stamp on it, voted to pass along what's recommended to us to pass. Any other discussion? Hearing none? All in favor? We got a 5-0 vote to go ahead and approve those rates for Mr. Martin to process and proceed forward. Now the CARES Act, since you added that on the agenda, Mr. Swell, start us off.
Well, just in reviewing it and having brief conversation with that, I know that it is limited in its scope. My understanding from our conversation is that it has to go to first responders, particularly the sheriff's department and EMS, is that correct?
When it's regarding the salaries or hazard pay, or when it's talking about the salaries and things.
Specifically.
We are still getting, every day, we are getting new updates. Matter of fact, I got another message today about some of the equipment that we can purchase from this, and then we're gathering ideas. So it is a broad scope, but we're still getting definitions through it. When we're regarding salaries and reimbursing for salaries, it is those departments.
Only
that can
for
go.
salary. That's-
Only for salaries.
That's the route we go.
Yeah, but other suggestions that have come in is thermal temperatures for our courthouses. Obviously, we can get reimbursed for a lot of the work that we've done inside of our buildings. So we've been collecting those invoices forever. We can pay, utilize it for salaries for those that we've put on quarantine. And we have been documenting that throughout this whole process. So we know of all the departments who has had to go home for quarantine or testing. Those, I believe we can get reimbursed. I cannot double dip, so I have to be very cautious to make sure that I don't get the money from another area.
And can we don't have to choose one option, like if we wanted to put half of it into additional pay for those departments, do we have that ability and use the other, or?
Yeah, so the bucket of funds that we have, and here's the timelines on it. We are able to draw down 30%, let me back up. What we are total allocated for this, what they call phase one, is $873,212. I can get 30% of that immediately. That's $261,964. And when I say immediately, yes, we can get that in advance, but I only have until September 1st to upload all of the documentation. The expenditures for that first 30% has to be in place by September 1. Like I said, we've already expended some of this stuff that we took out of general fund because we had reserves or we had extra money in the budget, and we had to take care of these things. So we'll be able to get reimbursed for that. So that's a September 1 deadline. The remaining part is on a reimbursement basis, which means we have to purchase it, and then we can put back in for the reimbursement. All of those expenditures have to be done by December 1st. And when I say expenditures, I mean, you can't order it by December 1st. It has to be in place by December 1st. That puts some kinks in hazard pay. So when we talk about what we're talking, in order to get this into payroll by September 1st, we'd have to have a decision very quick. The other alternative would be to use that funds for the salaries during this period and then free up our general fund budget for what we would normally pay for salaries. That would open up more doors for any type of pay adjustment for all employees, not just a certain category. Again, this documentation is coming in every day. They're requesting that we check this portal every day for new updates. So I'm still collecting ideas from all the different departments. Some of the things I'd like to spend it on, we did find out today that we're eligible to use the money for EMS units. We are in need of monitors at the EMS. Those are at their end of life. Basically, we're running them, but it's just like any upgrades. Eventually, the equipment runs its course. It's still good, but they no longer sell the product or the parts. So,
What is a monitor?
it's where we send, if they get hooked up for EKGs,
Yeah.
or they're having a STEMI, they will be able to send that electronically to the hospital.
Okay.
Do we know, you might have already sent it out, but do we know an estimated cost for that?
About $40,000 a piece. So we've got 4 units, bare minimum 4 units that we run, $40,000 a piece. Our EMS units run now about $160,000 a piece. So, but
And that's
the
for the,
unit, the actual ambulance itself.
Okay.
But the nice thing about using that and saying, okay, we're gonna buy a unit, we're gonna dedicate one of our older units or the new units to COVID patients, is that frees up SPLOST money in the public safety for later on. Because we typically put so much money in for EMS units throughout the SPLOST period. because the ambulance units have increased so much over the last few periods, we're gonna be short on supplies towards the end of the cycle for those units. So this is a good opportunity for us to utilize a different bucket of money.
But that's something we could order and have on hand by
Yeah,
December.
well, it takes about 4 to 6 months to get an ambulance unit in, so we actually ordered one 4 to 6 months ago. I
Okay.
believe our unit should be here before September 1 if we wanted to use that first bucket and then use the reimbursable base. Again, I think what's best is gonna be getting all of those ideas and then prioritizing. My computer's currently being used for the Zoom meeting, but I do have those started and collected so that we can analyze it and say, okay, what's the likelihood of these projects?
So we're running out of time to make a decision on the 30%.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing there is to reimburse salaries and then free up that money, and that gives us time to decide. And then the stuff that we can reimburse for that larger chunk of money, we have between now and December to start accumulate equipment and get reimbursed for it.
I think that is a very, and I do want to keep what I don't want to do is end up thinking that we can spend it on one thing and the Office of Planning and Budgeting come back and say, oh, no, that's not eligible, and then we have to pay the money back. So I want to be very cautious because we just don't have that money sitting there to reimburse it back. So we want to make sure all of our decisions. So as I get a formal document that says absolutely yes, this is covered, I will feel safe in saying this is good. But that does give us the most flexibility is to reimburse salaries during this period for those groups and then utilize our general fund that we would normally pay those salaries with to open up more doors for us. I would like to see us do capital projects. We've talked about the coroner or spacing. We do not want to see COVID deaths increase at all, but if they were to increase in the area, being able to have a place to put those, respectfully, those bodies would be very good for the county to have. We want to make the most use out of this money, and I hate to be that way because we know in the end taxpayers pay all this money, whether it's coming from the federal, the state, or local. It all comes on the backs of the taxpayers. 5 years ago, I would have said, no, we don't need to take the money because somebody has to pay for it. But the way the system works is when they give a bucket of money, you got to pull it back. Your taxpayers are paying it, so let's pull it back into the county and use it to the best means possible.
I know you brought up the corner. Can we use it to construct a building? As long as it's for something like that?
We would have to justify that it would be for COVID. Do I think I can do that? Yes. I think if we have increase in COVID deaths that need a place to store it, we currently only have a 3-unit cooler. I mean, no disrespect for the end of life process. Of that, one of those shelves is broken, so you're down to 2. So I think you can justify it. The problem with building a building is this has to be in place by December the 1st. And so we would be better off to find a location that we could rehab, or at a minimum, buy the cooler. Buy the cooler that, we have it, we're secured. Now, if you ask any employee, nobody wants it in the basement.
That's right.
That's the best place for it.
Yeah, but you tell somebody that they're working above that unit, and that is not their calling and their mission statement, and that is not, people who do that, they have a calling, they have a heart, but other people do not. And so I would not recommend putting it in a basement anywhere, or else you might have an exodus on employees. Like I said, temperature, anything that we can help in the court system, as you can tell from plastering, all that.
Yeah.
We can reimburse for the stuff that we've done in the tax commissioner's office and the tax assessor's office. So we spent general fund money on that last year that was available in the budget, but we can actually reimburse ourselves for that and then be able to put that money back into general fund.
If we going back to the corner, if we just go ahead and buy the cooler, are we talking about another 3-unit or a larger?
I would defer that question to the coroner.
Do we
have
know
looked at different options as far as buying a unit and then actually building a unit.
What about cost? Do we know?
I've asked him to look at that, but I think that's a meeting for him and I and to have. But I asked him last week if he could gather some of the cost estimates.
Okay.
And the two methods, whether that's buying it, if we can get it in quicker, or constructing the.
Seems like if you construct it, you have a bigger space than if you bought a cooler.
If we do see an uptick in cases, which I talked to a doctor today and someone in the school system, and it's happening. From when the specific physician saw patients back in March, April time, he had 4 confirmed cases, and now in this past month he's had 40. So I'm open to opinions on my end. I don't really have a definitive idea of what we should spend it on, but I think we need to consider what will do the most good for the citizens immediately with this money, whether it's, maybe it is going toward hazard pay, maybe it's going toward the cooling element or this EMS unit. I just want it to be most useful now, because I feel like if we're gonna see an uptick, it's gonna probably be happening in the next 30 to 90 days. So if we have the money, my opinion would be to put it to use as soon as possible, where it will actually be used for COVID.
And we're not limited to spend it for ourselves either. I will throw out that you can partner with other governments, including the Board of Education.
Are they eligible for CARES funds?
I don't know about this bucket.
Okay.
So there's so much of it out there. Like, we received some funding through the EMS as a provider. We've received some through Legacy Link on the senior center, senior services for meals. And so you have to be cautious that all these different buckets, you don't double dip in. And that one, you're not spending it in this bucket when it's eligible for this bucket. So I don't know what type or what bucket they're getting out of. But if another local entity, government entity, is providing COVID services or adjustments, we can partner with them and provide those funds. I was on one webinar, but it was larger counties, and we're not at that stage. They were doing career placement, career education. Somebody did I can't remember how they worded it, a technology equity project, so trying to get internet out there. They were getting very creative. The problem is, creative's great, but when you got a small time period, like you
Well,
said, put the money to the best use.
If we can pay those salaries, that would be a pot of money that we could kind of hold for the next month or two and see what direction things go. That would be nice to have, because there wouldn't be any time limit on how or when we could spend that. I still think I think we need to come up with some way to do hazard pay, because as cases rise, those guys are out there. I mean, they're picking up strange people on the side of the road at people's houses. They don't know who they're coming in contact with, and then they're potentially taking that back home. So I think they need some form of hazard pay, but having that money to sit there without any time constraints on it might help give us more flexibility for whatever we face, as we go through the fall. And then we can buy a lot of that equipment on that reimbursement schedule with the second pot of money.
Does the coroner have a place that he would like to see a cooler, or has he mentioned that?
There is a building that we're looking at that could be used in partnership with another under a partnership, public partnership, but still a partnership. I feel like that might be a conversation for him to have. I don't want to take it away from him. I don't know but
Yeah.
It is a decent option. And I think it's something that we can move on fairly quickly. Instead of building it, or instead of trying to find a shared building, it would be a standalone building that we could renovate or lease it, upgrade it and lease it. It'd be a place for a cooler, a place for an office, a place for him to meet with families. Because as you know, right now, he has nowhere
Right.
to do that.
I wonder if there were a closed down restaurant somewhere that already has a freezer that could be, retooled for something like that. If it's not, in the downtown area somewhere. I mean, that would be a freestanding building that you might get that's already got the potential for some kind of, I'm sure it'd have to be upgraded, but.
There's one in Royston right now, and there's an alley too.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I guess
If they're
what I'm
not
saying,
close neighbors.
that's an option. That's an option.
I know how people feel about that, but if we get in a bad situation, we'll have to take what we can get. I mean, that may turn into a real pressing problem.
That's a conversation
That'd be horrible.
I had with one of the funeral directors. They've kind of been proactive about thinking about
What you would
exactly
do in an
what you're
emergency.
saying if it comes down to that, which we, Lord help us, we don't get there.
We had, when we had the mass casualty event on the interstate, if it weren't for the surrounding counties that assisted us with that volume of, the casualties, we would have been in trouble. We were really blessed by Hart County and Madison County to be able to use their facilities. But, the building, I think we do have a viable option. If you guys are agreeable to pursuing that, like I said, he's getting those estimates, and I think that's a conversation that he and I kind of firm back up. We can do it on a reimbursement basis, but I believe with him pushing it and monitoring that project, we can get it done by December 1. And I think $50,000 could get us there. But again, those are just estimated numbers for renovating the building. I don't know if it includes the cooler or the construction of a cooler, so he'll firm up those numbers.
Any other thoughts about the CARES Act? Of course, we want to be very active and proactive, and we got the work session coming up the 25th of this month, so we could look at depth since we got to September the 1st.
What, I just thought something that, what about one of the new EMS building on Girard Road? Maybe we could have it it would be cheaper to construct an addition with a cooler to hold. I mean, that's isolated. It's not gonna, it's not gonna be obvious to people, and and draw a lot of
I think we'll have to get
attention.
that constructed by December 1st because
Yeah.
we'd have to jump through so many loopholes, not loopholes, wrong. We have to jump through so many hoops government-wise on bidding processes. But let me talk to him about that.
Yeah.
He may see it as a viable option as well. And then it's our building. Yeah. Now,
There's a lot of
I'd be
space
concerned
around
about the
that.
medics because please keep in mind, they sleep there
Yeah.
as well. It's not even just a work in the daytime. They do, when they don't have calls, they're sleeping there.
Yeah.
I don't know their feelings on it. I'd be concerned about the employees' talks.
Any other thoughts?
So if we use this first 30%, specifically for payroll, that gives us the freedom to move other money around, and we can kind of make a
Decision, like, we don't have to do something right away.
yeah.
And I have a webinar tomorrow, I think it's at 4 o'clock, regarding the accounting and the classification on this on the financial side. So if anything were to change about my statements, that I'm assuming this is the way it works, if that webinar proves to be something different, I'll let you guys know.
So we could at some point, have something in writing from them that approves using it to pay those salaries.
Basically what you get is guidance.
Yeah.
And so they'll put out, when there's frequently asked questions, and then they'll put out some memos on guidance. And then we'll use that for support.
When will you need to know, affirm, this is what we need to do?
On the reimbursement basis, I think we talk about that at the work session. For the other, I will start working on the payroll numbers because that does give us the most flexibility, and the back stuff, the stuff that we've already done. We've already purchased PP&E, we've already purchased some buildings. I'll get as much money back to our general fund as possible. But then on the other projects, the big bulk, the 600,000, I think we start working, we probably need a decision pretty fast. Work session, to say the likelihood of projects so that we can start on them right away.
So would we be okay to wait till the work session to say, yes, let's vote to go with the salary option right now?
Yes, and that would give me, because I can calculate the number and I can go ahead and have the support if you'll give me a second.
Well, you gotta
Let
write the
me-
checks by the work session.
No, because the checks have already been done, they're already been paid.
Okay.
The salary has actually already been paid, so I can actually go back to the beginning of the public health crisis to whenever.
So as long, to spend up that money.
Spend up that money.
Okay.
I do want to double check and make sure it's not tied to overtime or special units. That was the only part that I was really concerned about. Is it tied to, like, hey, do you have a dedicated COVID response unit? Or if it's just generalized everybody. The work session's on the 25th. I have until September 1. That would give me 3 or 4 days to
Well, I just wanna make sure it's gonna give you enough time to get what you need to get done.
Or if that doesn't work, are there fallbacks that we can use it for, readily assemble?
Yeah. What I would
Records.
do is I would pull it, if we had to, I know that unit, the EMS unit is coming in. That frees up SPOS money, but it still frees up SPOS money that can be then used for public safety capital projects. So it's still shifting around money, but that's $160,000 to 60 right there.
Okay.
But I'll work on calculating the payroll numbers and let you guys know what it equates to.
Any other questions? Make sure you, stay in touch with Ms. Thomas with any ideas come up and generate. I think some great ideas has already been presented out there. Appreciate you, bringing that up, where we can talk about it tonight. Okay. What we'll do on the next item is adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Weston. All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you.